check yours.
Yeah.
No. Is that middle one there on?
Yeah.
Here. I'm good.
Welcome, everyone. Would you please stand for a pledge of allegiance? Remain standing for a short invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, as we gather this evening, we ask, this council asks for strength, courage, and wisdom. And we thank you for this wonderful town that we live in and giving us the privilege to serve it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We call to order the Tuesday, June 21st meeting of the Mooresville Town Council to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our previous meeting. Gentlemen, if you look at the minutes, I did find, and I apologize for not calling you sooner, I found these in the 11th hour. Under new business, I apologize. In the unfinished business, the third paragraph, it says motion carried. About midway through the paragraph, motion carried 5-0. There were only 4 of us here, so that should be amended to 4-0. The next one is under new business, where it talks about the abatement for Packmore. It complies with the personal and real property abatement. Just a blind oversight there as far as the and real property. That we did review all of them and approve them all in our meetings per the recordings.
There's one other spelling mistake that I caught today too.
Which one was it?
Under town council comments, second paragraph, it's Shannon Cole. It's Kohl, I believe, not Cole, COLE.
With that, I need a motion to approve with the amendments.
Motion to approve with the amendments.
Motion been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I will abstain.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to? Motion made and seconded. Jeff Shane. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain.
Abstain.
Your unfinished business. There is one item that we inadvertently left off of the under unfinished business, and that was Baker Tilly. Probably paying them by the hour, so I would assume that we need to move them up to the front. Come on up, if you would. Gentlemen, you should have received an email this afternoon in regards to the responses that we received on our sewer bonds.
Good evening, everyone. Mitchell Eschweiler with Baker Tilly, working under Scott Miller. So as Tom said, today we did receive bids on the sewer bonds, which will ultimately pay off the bond anticipation notes which were issued by the sewage works. Those bonds are maturing on July 15th, so the goal here was to find a buyer for the long-term debt and be able to close on those bonds before that ban matures on July 15th. So if you want to turn in the report I just passed out, this is summarizing those bids that we received. So today we received bids from both Regions Bank as well as Signature Bank. So those were the two banks that sent us bids today. I will say we have done bonds here in the last week or so where we did the same sort of process and no bids were received. So we were happy to see that we did have two competitive banks sending in bids for these sewer bonds. On page 2 at the top, I'll walk through these different alternatives. So the banks, we had asked for different terms, 10-year, 12-year, and then different structures. And I believe Scott had walked through this. Were we going to go out and issue a bond with a level debt service, or were we going to potentially delay principal and wrap that around your existing debt? So this summarizes each of those different alternatives. You'll see there both banks submit a interest rate for a 10-year level bond issue. Both, for all these scenarios, the same size of bond. It's $2,170,000. So for Regions, if you were to go and do a 10-year level bond issue, they would like to close on June 30th. Their proposed interest rate is 3.56%, and the total interest cost you'd pay over the life of that bond issue would be $432,000. Signature proposed on the same amortization. The difference here is they would like to delay closing a couple weeks. They'd like to close on July 11th, so that does push you up a little closer to that July 15th date. For their interest rate under the 10-year level, they would like to do 3.585%, so slightly higher than what we saw from Regions on the 10-year. Under that scenario, total interest cost is a little over $433,000, so slightly higher on the total interest cost. And then the next scenario we looked at was, what if we did an additional 2 years on their sewer bonds? Again, both banks submit interest rates on that as well. Regions Bank, under the 12-year level, their interest rate was 3.66%. Total interest cost, that would be a little over $538,000. So you can see there, going out 2 more years costs you about $100,000 in total interest cost. Under the 12-year level with Signature Bank, again, closing on July 11th, they propose an interest rate of 3.585%, and their total interest cost would be $524,000. And very similar, again, about $100,000 more you pay in interest by going out 2 more years. And then the final one here was the 12-year wrap. If we did a 12-year structure and wrap those bonds around the outstanding debt for the sewage works, they propose an interest rate of 3.75%. And here you can see that the total interest cost, because of that wrap structure, has gone up to $837,000, which is approximately $300,000 more if you were to just do a 12-year level. Now the big change, if you go down just before that first underline there, replacements and improvements, the biggest change you'll see under these different scenarios is how much money the sewage works would have available each year for capital improvements. Under the 10-year level scenarios, you'll see there you have about $437,000 annually to spend on capital. If you extend that out 12 years, that's going to give you an additional approximately $40,000 each year to spend on capital improvements. And then the big change there in the 12-year wrap, by wrapping those bonds, we're lowering your maximum debt service, and that's going to allow you to have about $625,000 to spend on replacements and improvements. So for each of these alternatives, the trade-off here is, do you want to pay a little more in interest costs but have a higher allowance for annual capital improvements? And that's what we're hoping that tonight you would be able to consider these alternatives and ultimately make a selection. In the bids received, Regions is going to hold their bid till the 23rd. Signature was a little longer. They had mentioned 30 days in their email. And under each of these different structures, you'll see this, we've already adopted rates a couple years ago. None of these are going to impact your rates. So no rate increase or decrease would be needed under these scenarios. One thing I will bring up at the bottom, you'll see the note here from Regions Bank. They did offer us a couple different interest rates if we were willing to adjust the optional redemption date. And what that is when you can call these bonds. By adjusting that, you'll see they're proposing to have a slightly higher interest rate. From our recommendation, it's probably better to take the lower interest rate today than move up your call date by 1 year. And the reason being here is your bonds here are relatively small. So if you were to go call those bonds in 26 or 27, the amount of principal left over is probably around $500,000. And once you factor in issuance costs, you're probably not going to realize savings anyway. So it's probably better to take the lower interest rate today than hope in the future that interest rates are back in the 1% or so where you'd hope to see savings there. Any questions on these scenarios that were proposed?
So we can call them at 5 years in?
Under this scenario, depending on which one you select, so the 10-year level you'd be able to call in 2027. Under the 12-year scenarios, that'd be 2028. And then if you're looking on pages 4 through 14, what we've done here is on page 4, we're laying out your outstanding 2010 bonds. And then starting on page 5, what we've done is shown an amortization looking at each of the different interest rates proposed by the banks. And there you can see, for example, on page 5, that'd be the 10-year level with Regions Bank. Page 6, what we've done is shown the 2010 bonds with those 22 bonds. And then you can see in the far right column on page 6, that would be the total annual debt service that you're paying on your sewage works bonds. And really the biggest change, if you go to page 13, 13 is where you're looking at that 12-year wrap scenario. This illustrates that very well. So on page 13, you can see in the principal column, we're only paying $10,000 in principal each year, and then at the end it accelerates. And then on page 14, this is where you're going to see how that wrap structure is able to bring down your maximum annual debt service. Instead of it being $850,000, you're looking at a max debt service of about $702,000. So that's where you get the additional amount for capital improvements, paying less debt service.
Do you have a recommendation?
It really depends on what you think going forward you're going to need for those replacements and improvements. One way to look at it is if you're looking at the 12-year wrap structure, you are paying about $300,000 more in interest costs,
Right.
but you're also getting about $1.8 million more over the life of that bond issue that you can spend on replacements and improvements. So you're going to have about $1.5 million more that you wouldn't have under these other scenarios to spend on other capital needs for the utility. But if you're concerned about paying the total interest cost, then you're probably going to want to do something like the 10-year, the 12-year level. It's really a trade-off on what you think going forward you're going to have to spend on those capital improvements. I guess it's really up to the council on how you want to go about that. I don't have an overall recommendation. Not knowing what's going to be coming up in the future as far as your capital needs, it's going to be a little hard for me to make a recommendation. But I will say, so I believe Scott had presented a report with similar scenarios, and one thing we were pleased to see is that each of these interest rates for each of the scenarios was lower than what we had assumed. So under any of the different scenarios that you pick, you are getting an interest rate lower than what was presented originally, so you will have some additional allowance for replacements and improvements.
Candy.
So, under the scenario that you said there'd be $1.5 million additional money for capital improvement projects.
Yep.
What would be the interest? Let's say the town borrowed that money in a hypothetical for a future capital improvement project. In other words,
So you're looking at today.
yeah,
Interest rates, I mean, they're floating around, they keep going up, but you'd probably be looking at borrowing 3.5% to 4% is probably what you get on an interest rate there. So instead of having to borrow that and spend additional interest costs for the loan, you'd be able to have $1.5 million that you're generating over the next 10 to 12 years that you could spend on infrastructure.
And we'd be paying,
You're paying, if you're looking at the 12-year level versus the 12-year wrapped, you're paying about $300,000 more in total interest costs over that 12-year period. But at the same time, instead of generating $476,000 per year, you're generating $625,000, and that's over a 12-year period. So about $150,000 more per year you can spend on the sewage works.
so it's kind of like getting a low-interest loan now.
Yep.
For that $1.5 million, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
That's assuming we would need it
Yep, exactly.
for something, you know?
But you can imagine over the next 12 years, you're going to have to do infrastructure improvements to the sewage works just to keep up with replacement of assets.
And we are in a rising rate environment, so
Exactly. Any additional questions? I think ideally we'd like to be able to notify banks in the next day or so. If you are able to make a decision tonight as a council, we do have a bid form that they will look to have signed likely by, I think Tom would probably be the person to sign those, and then we'd submit it to them and move towards a closing.
can we, if we went with the longer term, the wrap, we can pay it off early.
Yeah,
At what point, you said?
2028 would be when you do you can call it.
So 6 years in, halfway in?
Yeah.
Basically.
Now it'd be just the remaining principal outstanding and accrued interest of the day. There's no, under each of these scenarios, there's no premium for calling that. So just be at 0%.
So it would give us an option to pay it off early if we wanted to.
Yep.
And I would recommend to this council that you do make a decision tonight. If you don't, we're going to have to call a special call meeting in order to take action so that we can move forward with the selection of the bank and get closed by the time that we have to take the ban out. So the timing is a little bit tight here.
And we actually thought we were ahead of schedule.
Jewel, do you have any sort of thoughts, just because you've done a lot of bonds? Do you
No,
have
this is
an
one of
idea?
those policy decisions. I mean, that's not really a legal analysis that goes into it.
Right.
You're just going to have to weigh as to whether or not you want to have additional cash balance in order to do any projects or pay as little interest as possible.
And normally I'd be for the lower interest and all of that, but I don't like exchanging expensive debt for cheap debt, and I don't know that I can predict that perfectly for the future, you know.
Yeah, and right now it's really hard to know where rates are going to go. I mean, we think they're going up, and that's where it looks like it's going, but we don't really know a couple of years down the road where we're going to be at as well.
And you don't want to make a recommendation.
Similarly, my recommendation would really be based on what you think would be, what's more important to you. Like you said, do you want to pay less interest or do you want to go and have money for capital improvements? I just don't think that's, not knowing all the facts, that's probably not the best for me to go ahead and make a recommendation.
Path's gonna go. Right. Don't either. Not completely.
And just so we're clear, where you're seeing the advantage is one debt's going to be paid off, and then we're going to use that revenue at the last of the on the wrap.
No, where you're seeing the advantage is because you're wrapping that debt, your annual payments are lower. So instead of being about $850,000 that you're paying annually on your sewer debt, you're only going to pay about $700,000. So that's $150,000 more of cash that's going to sit in your sewage works that can be used for those replacements and improvements. And then to the extent, if you don't use that money on replacements and improvements, it's just cash that's going to build up in the sewage works, and you could apply to another project down the road. If you don't spend that 600 and some odd dollars every year, it's just money that you'll build up in a depreciation fund. So yeah, it could potentially be used as cash on hand for another project if you did have something larger coming up down the road.
Just so we're clear, it's just that we're not making as large of payments.
Yep, correct. Exactly.
Questions or comments? Looking at a small difference in the interest rate of 0.2%, and it does give us a little bit of a safety net to go with the wrap. Jeff, your thoughts?
Have you talked to Dan or anybody or Calvin? I mean, there's future projects that you know of. I haven't talked to them.
There's nothing that's on the horizon. Obviously, we do have the phase 2 that we haven't done, but I think that was built in some to the rates. But that's where we've lowered this down to 10 years rather than 20 years. We have revenues that could fund it possibly if and when. That was an upgrade and a change. Didn't necessarily have to happen for the phase 2. The reason that our rates cover this and leave us the surplus that we're looking at, but not enough to do another $2 million project, is because we have shortened the interest, or we have shortened the bond length in half.
Yeah, so we did that again to avoid some of those longer interest rate costs of going out 20 years. So you are saving on interest by shortening this bond from a 20-year to either a 10 or a 12-year level. So there are savings there from not paying the additional 8 to 10 years of interest costs. And that's the reason why when we are going about sending these bids out to banks, we wanted to shorten that bond, because your rates right now, as you can see, are covering it and giving you plenty of allowance for some of those replacements and improvements.
We could break tomorrow. Something could break tomorrow. We do have one small cushion of the food and beverage, but one major failure and we could be in trouble.
What about our capacity?
Sorry, say what?
What about our capacity at the point?
Our capacity today is good. For the developments that are on the future or on the horizon, they are good. Capacity, that was, Jeff, that was you guys, 2013. 2012. The bond payment that we're finishing up on, that was forward thinking and a good project then. IDM always has moving targets. We've had some issues out there, and we seem to be getting ahead of those. But one thing gets cured, and another thing pops up. But nothing as major as what it was. Shane?
Well, that one it's very expensive if you have an issue. We learned that real quick. And that was just, from what I understood, basically an issue with pH or something, just the one issue. So I lean towards, at first I was, going to go with the lower rate, but it's not a lot of difference, and I think it's fairly cheap money. And I think it'll get more expensive if something were to happen in the future. Plus, you'd have to go through the process, the cost of trying to borrow and all of that, and that's a substantial cost too. So you would save that. It's just so.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gregor?
Like I say, it's nice to have something if something major does happen.
So when we do need to move forward, like I said, I thought we were ahead of the curve, but with this bank here saying, hey, we can do this at the end of the month, that was our goal. That was our goal moving into this. It's to not be waiting until the last minute.
I do think we need to make it clear for the benefit of the public that this isn't new. This is refinancing the bond anticipation note from a while back. So it's not new debt. It's just refinancing it.
Exactly.
So I don't want people to think we're borrowing on top of what we borrowed.
Motion to move forward on replacing the ban, and what direction do you guys want to go? I need that in the motion.
I'd make the motion that we replace the ban with the 12-year wrap from Regions Bank at 3.75.
Motion been made. Do I have a second?
Second. Sorry, Greg got it.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We are going to pay off our bond anticipation note. Again, this was a project where we rehabilitated and replaced and upgraded a lot of our south sewer lines. We did this right in the beginning of COVID at the time, so we did not have to raise the rates during that time. We took a bond anticipation note. We have paid on it for 2 years, and this is replacing that. We did, during that time, during that 2-year period, we did go 1 year without raising the sewer user fees, and after a 1-year period, we did come back in and raise them. So we are set, we're ready to fund it, and you will see no changes on your sewer bills because of the actions taken tonight.
Just sign there. This is acceptance of the 375 for the 12-year wrap.
Just sign it.
And then in connection with these, we're moving from a taxable bond to a non-taxable bond on this, which I think helped probably with the sale of everything. With the disclosure and everything, we're going to need everybody's signature on it. So I don't know if we get all the documents here, let's say on Friday, would everybody be able to come in and sign by Monday?
Yes.
This does it.
Yeah, that's going to be part of all of this because it's disclosures that need to get going.
Okay.
I figure we want to get that back to them as soon as possible.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Jeff with the tourism company.
Does he need one of our hearing impaired things?
I want to thank everyone. I have some developments that are going on that may be a positive impact and less burdensome on the town. So I would like to respectfully request until I think it's July 19th, if that's okay with everyone, and it gives everyone. The amount of information I gave was pretty voluminous, and hopefully people have had a chance to go through it. But I understand too, people have busy schedules. But there is something that may happen shortly before July 19th, and I think it might make a major difference. So with the town's approval, I'd like to request that.
Comments or questions from the board?
Make a motion to table this until the second meeting in July 19th.
Is the meeting's on the 19th?
5th and 19th.
Are you saying that you want the meeting to be the 19th or that your development's going to be the 19th?
Hopefully, it's going to be a week before
Oh,
that
okay,
change.
so the 19th's enough time.
So,
for
yeah,
you.
so the
Okay.
19th, I could present fully what everything would consist of
Okay.
at that time.
I just want to be clear. I'll second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Justin Shane, 5-0.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, Jeff.
Creative, Mike, can you help us out here?
President, members of the council, I have in front of me to distribute to you, and Clerk Treasurer Walmsley received this earlier today, a copy of, and you also might have it. This is, I lost my staple on that, Joe, I apologize. This CF1 was submitted to us today by, as you can see on the bottom, Russell Baruta, who's the Finance Director of the Healthcare Division of Creative Foam, formerly known as Mount Olive Manufacturing. The original CF1 was submitted by the deadline, May 15th. It was actually the 16th this year because the 15th fell on a Sunday. They submitted with incomplete information at the time. They had plant management had left employment. Things were kind of left up in the air, so I suggested at the time, submit what you have that you can by that deadline so we can get it in the hopper. And so you had that original one that was continued at your last meeting that was presented, and then late last week, I sent you documents, I think, in your council packet that were some tax documents that we had received through the county assessor's office for Creative Foam that indicated a name of the corporate that I then followed up with, who then had Russell Baruta contact me today. So today they have completed the CF1 on the personal property. I do want to point out that they did not file in time on a CF1 for their real property tax abatement that was also granted on a clean room that they developed at the site. We started this process in 2020. They'll be able to follow up on that schedule next year, but they did not get filed in time this year. So unless the council would want to move on from that with a waiver of non-compliance and go through the public hearing process, which I would not recommend, I would suggest that they can pick up in their following subsequent year on their 10-year tax abatement schedule. I would also suggest that based upon the information we have today on that 10-year tax abatement schedule, while they have not completed the 160 jobs they suggested that the 10-year project would create, they're only about 2 years deep into the project. They have created, I think without my glasses on, it says here, 74 of the 160 additional jobs. What happened was they purchased $680 some odd thousand of personal property for some welding machines, PPE projects that they expected to do for the federal government that did not materialize. So only about $90,000 of that personal property has been put into play at this time on their 10-year tax abatement schedule. But so again, based upon that and the number of jobs that they've created, I would encourage you to provide the substantial compliance designation for this CF1 tonight so they can move forward and gain the 2022 or 22 payable 23 relief on this personal property. Then next year they would have to pick up the real property to do 23 payable 2024. They missed out on the CF1 deadline for that real property this year.
So will the real property abatement drop off for a year? Does the county?
Right. What would happen is that because you would not forward the documents to the county assessor, that abatement would not be applied 22 payable 2023, but they have the subsequent years within that 10-year schedule that they can then.
Assuming they filed correctly.
Right.
And Mike, I just want to clarify for the record, because you received this today. We have a signature from Mr. Baruta of 6/21/22 on the CF1, but the CF1 form for the personal property was actually initially filed on 5/16, is that correct?
That's correct. 5/16, there was no local plant management, Counselor, so what I suggested was, and it was actually submitted by someone in their HR department, we said, would you submit just as much information as you can on that original one, that CF1 that had Jennifer's name, I think was signed on in blue ink, but so they submitted it to get in the hopper before the deadline. And then we suggested, when they got together with their corporate team, which has now happened, and today we have this from Russell Baruta to show.
And so the document that is in front of the council today is essentially an amended CF1
Yes.
of the 615. I think with that establishment, we're okay with. And if they have, I mean, if the county has a problem with it, they'll come back and then we can fix
And
it.
actually, the county's involved in this also because the county gave them a deferral on their tax submittal that they had to complete, which was done last week, which I forwarded to the council in the packet to show, hey, we're working on this documentation, this is catching up to itself. So the county is aware of the fact that this was delayed as well, and the county assessor is involved in this with me, that she's the one who provided those documents for me to give you last week.
Should we attach her email to our record, or does it matter?
I don't think, I mean, as long as she is under the understanding your record is pretty clear here tonight.
It's in our packet, I've seen it, so.
Yeah.
From the assessor.
Yep.
Can you explain what they're doing with the equipment now? You said they lost the contract. Could you re-explain that to me just real quickly?
Their purchase of personal property was around $680,000, maybe $90,000. About $90,000 of it's been put in play. The remainder of it is in storage. It's unused, untaxed. It's not on the tax schedules yet because it's still sitting in storage wrapped up. That, again, it's personal property they've purchased for the company that they were going to use over the 10 years of the personal property tax abatement. The company seems pretty confident at some point in time it will put that additional personal property into play, pull it out of.
So they're not really realizing the abatement?
No, they're not
anyway,
realizing the
except
abatement on it
the-
yet because it's not being taxed and it's not on the schedule yet. Right. They own it,
Yeah.
but it's still off. So, and that's where Julie came into play to help them separate that which has been put into play and is being assessed and now tax abated, and that which is still under wraps. So.
Okay.
Start the 10-year clock on it, though.
Well, actually, the 10-year clock started last year, as I recall. This would have been their second year on the CF1. This is looking at. This might have been their first year. Estimated completion date was January 30th of 2021, so it would have been assessed right around that time. This may be their first or second year, but they still would have the majority of years left.
And it doesn't restart the clock, it's
No,
the
they just
abatement's
missed a
abated.
year out of the 10-year
Yeah.
schedule. And the tax abatement schedule is actually started by the abatement recipient. For example, when you did flow source, they delayed theirs an additional year because of the construction timing, or
Right.
they did that.
Mhm.
More comments or questions to Mike? Need a motion to either find them in substantial compliance, find them outside of substantial compliance, and deny, and in essence deny the abatement.
Make a motion to find Creative Film Corporation in substantial compliance.
Motion been made, do I have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Dustin, Greg, 5-0.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, see you, man.
Next time on the agenda is Ordinance 5, the payoff of the debt for the Motorola dispatch equipment and the fire trucks. Last meeting, we did have a public hearing on this. This will be the second reading to approve Ordinance 5 if the council chooses. Comments or questions? Motion to approve or deny Ordinance 5.
Motion to approve ordinance 5 to pay off the Motorola dispatch equipment and fire trucks.
Been made, do I have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Greg Dustin, 5-0. Next item is Resolution 14, 2022, one-time funding of the police K-9 program. I know this got pretty complicated. Diane, could you please explain?
The ordinance that was originally created for the additional appropriation out of the rainy day fund tonight, the public hearing was also created as a separate, the public hearing also created a separate K-9 fund for the purpose of a one-time funding of $25,000. After speaking to the town's financial advisor from Baker Tilly, she did recommend creating a new fund for a one-time expenditure. She presented two options, which were pay the $25,000 directly from the rainy day fund, or transfer it to the general fund where it can either be additional appropriated if it is to be spent this calendar year, or add it to the police general fund budget during the 2023 budget process as a one-time supplemental funding of $25,000. In addition to that amount decided on by the new, in addition to be decided on by the new police chief. Baker Tilly recommendation was to transfer it to the general and create a new line item in the police budget. Legal has created a new ordinance that allows for a transfer to the general fund and an additional appropriation of $25,000 for 2022. With a new line item being created in the police general budget. However, should council vote to choose that option, in order to meet the publication deadline, the public hearing will need to be re-advertised and rescheduled to allow for the 10-day notice deadline, since the original advertisement and ordinance was out of the rainy day. We have also created a transfer fund resolution. Should council decide to just transfer the funds from the rainy day to the general for now and decide how and when to appropriate it once the new police chief is chosen, the transfer alone would not require an additional appropriation. The current K-9 donation fund will remain as a separate fund, and all current and future donations earmarked for the K-9 program will be used to supplement the general fund K-9 line item and spent directly from the K-9 donation fund.
What do we have before us today?
So what you have in front of you today is a resolution that transfers from the rainy day simply over to the general fund, for you then to make a decision as to how you're going to appropriate that later out of the general fund, or work with a new chief to start that program. So this is one of the options. The other one is the ordinance to create the whole new line item. That's not in front of you today. That's going to be, we have to advertise the public hearing for that, that step.
Both accomplish the same thing.
Both would accomplish the same thing, it's just a different way to get there.
But this would not create, would this create a line item, the resolution? It would not.
Not at this time.
It just transfers it to the general fund.
It transfers it to the general fund with the notation that it's purpose for a one-time initial funding for the K-9
It would
program.
earmark it.
So what threw this off was our advertisement didn't match the updated ordinance from that Beth wrote.
We received the update on the 9th and the 11th, on or before the 11th, to meet that deadline. So that, we only had 2 days there to make some changes, so it had to be in the paper, right? Oh, yeah, that's right. It had to be in the paper by the 11th, so we wouldn't have been able to meet the deadline.
I'm for the ordinance and the line item. So we would, I don't know if he's wanting a motion or not, or for discussion or what.
when we do the budget, right now, if, and I'm gonna take the dog, and I'm gonna put this over here, and let's say that Dave does his MVH budget, and he wants to buy, widgets. Can he put a line item in his budget that says widgets? I'm gonna buy widgets with this money. Can he do that without us doing that?
So he can put it into the budget he proposes to you,
Mhm.
but you have to pass the budget. So you're gonna have to say, yes, this goes, or no, this goes. So at the end of the day, you try and leave it up to your department heads to say, here's kind of the money we have, tell me how you want it to be spent. And that budget is going to be their budget that they present to you to say, this is how I want to spend this money. And that's what they're asking for you. If the money's not there to pay for the widgets, then I guess you're going to say, nope, take that out. Or explain to me why it is that we need those widgets.
But if our chief would say, in this next budget process, says, I want to put in for a dog. I want to put a line item that says K9, not donations, just K9. I want to put $1 in there. We pass this in, we get this out of the rainy day fund, we can fund that outside of tax dollars right into that fund.
Yeah, you would have
From the general fund.
you would have to appropriate it. So what this would do is this would put it into the general fund. You can do it either by appropriating that into the budgeted line item that's presented to you, or go through the process of making an additional appropriation this year for that usage. So this would be non-appropriated money right now.
It would just be transferring it into the general, not appropriated.
Correct. It's earmarked for it, but it's not appropriated yet.
Can I ask you a question, Jill? Say that we purchase a dog, but we additional appropriate $10,000 for a dog. I know that's a low dollar amount. And then we get a bill to pay for dog food or something of that nature. Do we have to do another additional appropriation to?
No, it's for the K-9 program.
It depends upon what, so if you're saying that you do the appropriation for $25,000 for the initial funding for the K-9 program.
Okay.
If that dog costs 10 and then you have expenses on top of that, that's still within that initial appropriation.
We can move the whole $25,000 right into that line item. If the chief says, I want a line item for dog, widgets, we can put $25,000 right in that widget. We're not putting it in there from levy money, we're putting it in there from this.
No, it would be sitting in the general fund as this transfer so if you go with this resolution, it would be transferred into the general fund with the earmark that specifically goes for the funding for the K-9 program. So you would have to take action by this council to appropriate that $25,000 for anything outside of that funding.
We don't know, what is it, Robert McNamara said, we don't know what we don't know? We don't know if the chief's gonna say, yes, I do want a dog, or no, I don't want a dog.
Then he doesn't have to spend it.
$25,000 will be there by resolution if we do this. The next thing that we need to do is we need to figure out during the budget process, if the new chief wants a dog, so we need to figure out if we can fund that dog with tax dollars I'm done. What do you gentlemen want to do?
I make a motion that we move forward with the ordinance that does what we've told the public we're going to do about 1,000 times, which is have a line item for the budget, and then the chief budgets thereafter. It does it all in one swoop. It doesn't do resolution to general, and then we have to reappropriate it to this, and then we have to do this. It does it all in one swoop laid out in the ordinance.
We have a motion on the floor.
That's what we were supposed to be voting on today, but the notice didn't match what the end document was. Although Beth did tell me that she didn't think it was necessary, but I'm fine with that, whatever gets it right. So the motion is to move forward with the ordinance.
Jeffrey?
I mean, if we get the same result, I mean, that we want $25,000 for a canine like we've promised. I mean, we've got time, so I don't see what the problem is with waiting another time and advertising and creating a line item. It'll be ready for the new chief, so that's my opinion.
Is that in the form of a second?
I second that.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We will start all over and do this again. Yeah, I don't know.
Should have been done today.
We're going to go down the road to ordinance, so we need to advertise.
Yes,
It was
just trying to get at it.
Shane, Jeff, five.
That just takes care of it, so there's.
Never seen it.
1-3 East Main Street.
So I think it was yesterday that marked the 30-day time period, so we are good to move forward. Dave, I think you have a couple different quotes for the demolition for the council to consider regarding 1 and 3 East Main.
I don't have quotes, but I have written specs to send out to bid.
To send out, okay.
We just need a motion to move forward with requesting quotes.
Or for the response to the specifications for the demolition of 1 and 3 East Main.
You have them with you?
I don't, but I did send them to Beth Copeland, and she approved.
Right.
Yeah. I'll send them to each one of you tomorrow.
Beth did approve them, though.
She did.
How long does this process, explain the process to me, would you? And how long?
So I don't know what date specific is for the responses on it. It's probably going to be at least 2 weeks is my guess.
I think we'll advertise it for 2 weeks in the paper, and then we will have the bids dropped off with Miss Diane. Then we will put it on the agenda for opening of the bids. Once we award the bids, we'll have a pre-construction meeting to go over with whichever firm we choose. And we'll make sure all the fire, police, maybe council member to outline what we expect.
I think best case scenario, you're looking at the end of July of having that thing down, but it's all going to be dependent upon the schedule of the lowest responsive bidder for that work. So.
And you've already said it, but we do need to inform the building owners adjacent. And you put it in, and you said it, but you put it in there that they will schedule this time.
Yes.
Like they're gonna tell us when they're gonna be here and not just say, oh, we'll be there, and then never give you a date.
Right, it's in the specs that during the pre-construction meeting, we will set a date, and once demolition begins, they will not stop until
Right.
it's complete, weather permitting.
Need a motion for Dave to move forward on requesting those quotes.
Motion for Dave to move forward on collecting quotes for the building demolition.
Motion been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Thanks, Dave.
Greg, Shane, 5-0. Under new business, Old Settlers Street closure permit. This was for the Old Settlers Parade. Is this the same route as last year?
He wanted to make it clear they are going back to the old route.
Get my Halloween candy again.
I was going to say, you get your Halloween candy.
Looks like this will be, the requested date will be August 7th, 2022, time of 1 PM. And Dave, you've signed off. Matt, no, JD signed off, and Brock signed off. Any comments or questions from the board? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Matt signed off, or did he say no? Oh, JD.
Second. Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Greg, 5-0.
Okay.
Don't we usually have a sheet to sign off on this? Don't we usually have a sheet to sign off on this? Still under new business, the COVID policy. We had adopted the COVID policy back 2 years ago. We didn't want any of our employees to be afraid to come to work. We didn't want any of them to be sick and come to work. And we were pretty liberal with it at that point in time. Most companies are revisiting that. They're changing time frames. They're changing what constitutes exposure. Needing to know if the council was prepared to move forward with making those changes and having them brought back to us at our next meeting. This is nothing to be decided tonight other than, are we ready to get back to normal if we can?
Yeah, I'm fine with revisiting that, that's fine.
Yeah, agreed.
Right. Justin?
Yeah, CDC has changed their guidelines dramatically since we visited this last
Well,
time.
right now, all we've said is if you think you're exposed, stay home. And I'm not saying it's been taken advantage of, but we don't want to give the opportunity out, put the opportunity out there. Let's just go back and revisit this and maybe even go back with, positive testing for days off. Okay?
Is there a council member that would be interested in heading that up as far as writing that protocol out for us? Or are you wanting the are you wanting the department heads to do that?
I'll make contact with each of them. If that's all right with the council, I'll make contact and we're going to come back because I think this was brought up by some of the department heads. Next item, Ordinance 6, 2022.
And then this is here for your review. This is a super voluntary annexation of the piece of property held by Debbie Vanoy. She had signed the petition and it was returned on June 17th. So this is what the process, we've got to advertise that hearing 20 days in advance, so it will be at one of your later meetings. The 19th that we're looking at, I think it's the 19th. So we're looking at the 19th for the consideration of the super voluntary annexation.
Is this the one that,
Came and got the hookup, right?
Yeah, this is the one that on
Yeah, that
Ferguson
she
Road
came-
that gives us contiguity to the Payoff.
yeah, she came along, many months ago, yes.
Has she hooked to the sewer yet?
She hasn't hooked to the sewer yet, but Dave has been in contact with her. Still is very interested in that.
I didn't know if we could continue until she was hooked or not.
Well, she's petitioned for super voluntary, so she's driving that.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's asking to be annexed into the town.
So this will be in the second meeting,
What's that?
this will go to the second meeting of July.
Second meeting in July, because we have to have a 20-day advertising period before the hearing, so.
Department heads. Not everybody at once.
Got a few things to consider tonight. The first item is the bridge on Carlisle Street. Tom and I sat in a meeting with the county engineers last week. And when we first had the bridge failure, it was the understanding that we pay into a bridge fund with the county and they were going to take care of it. Well, during the meeting the other day, they informed us that they are not going to take care of it. They will help, but so I brought Mark Butler along. He's looked at it, but I don't know if, Tommy, if you want to add anything to where I'm going with this.
The meeting, their engineers, they did have engineers look at the bridge. And their cost estimates came back extremely high, higher than what we thought they would be. I think the comment was made, does that include the cameras to take the pictures of the license plates to gather the tolls? Dave said, I think we can do it in-house, but then found out that there's a little more to it than that.
Yeah.
And Dave is very quick to volunteer to do a lot of this stuff, and sometimes almost to a fault. In this case here, I don't know that Banning Engineering and the engineering company that the county uses sees it as simple as what we do. They're talking possibly $300,000 or more.
There's a lot of liability that goes with the bridge.
So what they offered at that time was possibly a 50-50 split. There is a bridge tax that they collect. They are in the process of doing away with that. It is 0.25% on income that is designated for that, and they pay manpower for maintenance and upkeep of the bridges throughout the county. Dave did reach out to Banning Engineering just to see if it was something that we could do in-house. Banning is looking at it as a similar, bigger job than what we saw it as. But Mark also had some ideas on funding for it. Possibly, and I don't know if we got these out of order, possibly because of the construction season, putting it off until our next construction season and including it in a community crossings matching grant application. And then still trying to partner with the county to where we would pay for any incidentals or anything outside of what the grant would pay for, and maybe the county would pay the match portion of it. But this got real complicated real quick.
And to complicate it even a little more, Mark pointed out that since part of the bridge has failed, we probably need to shut it off completely, because we know that there's a failure there.
Is there not an agreement on this tax issue between the county and the town? Is there some kind of agreement about that? I mean, I'm not understanding how they can collect a tax and then not use it for what it was for.
Well, they said that they had, 175 structures throughout the county, and 27 of them were on their replacement, rehabilitation list of things to do as far as assessments, and they were trying to put us in, prioritize us into that. Now, they also offered, and this is where where we're bringing it to you, they also offered to come in and address the council on what they could or could not do, would or would not do. We wanted to bring it to the council and say, where do you want us to go from here? Wade, do you see Do you see that as the same way?
Yes, yes, that is accurate statement.
Jewel, does this make
Generally-
any sense?
And correct me if I'm wrong here through your experience, generally speaking, counties are responsible for all bridges within the county. So you don't have jurisdiction over those bridges. You can't go out and fix them unless there is an interlocal agreement where you do it. So it may be a situation in which they can't work it into their schedule to get to it soon enough for your concern so that it's going to be closed. And so you want to take actions on that. But at the end of the day, Morgan County is the one that's responsible for all the bridges in Morgan County. It's specifically taken out of the control of the locals. And so the issue is, I absolutely agree with Mark. If we have a failure on that bridge, we need to shut it off. We know that there's a hazard there, that it is failing, and so we need to close that, and that's going to be the consideration of this council. Council can make the determination to find the funding to get that thing fixed now and go forward that way. Some options that, just off the top of my head of what you can look at is, fine, county, we'll fix this now, but you are going to pay us back under this schedule to do something like that. They can choose to agree to that or not agree to that, because they'll have their schedule where it comes out. So at the end of it really becomes a political issue at that point.
Well, if you accept it on this, what if it's a larger bridge that's more expensive and they're responsible? I don't, is this an Indiana code thing, or is this an agreement type thing?
Mark Butler, Van Engineering. About the Indiana code, I think there's some language in the code, and I'm not a bridge designer per se, that specifically defines how a bridge is different than a culvert. The bridge, I say bridge, but it might not be defined as a bridge because the span is so short in this case. It's only spanning 6 to 8 feet, where a bridge generally is spanning larger than that.
So is there a question here as to whether or not this is a bridge or not a bridge?
Yes.
Is that the, okay.
What I'm suggesting is perhaps could look into what the statute defines as a bridge. When we design new, like for example, reinforced concrete box culverts, we can design them much larger than what this opening is. So typically, this would fall from an engineering perspective into a culvert rather than a bridge. However, the construction, where it has 2 abutments and a span, it looks like a bridge, but it might not be defined as a bridge in the code. I don't know the answer to that tonight, so I just wanted to bring that up.
I mean, if that's the question, I can look up as to whether or not this thing would fall under the definition of a bridge or not.
The county paid for 2 on the same creek. That's when, as soon as they said, we're only going to pay half, the conversation pretty much ended. I was expecting them to say, yeah, we're going to jump in there and we're going to take care of this, because they had done 2 on the same creek. The one right there at the welding shop, and then the one on up, what is that, Greenwood, comes through there, Jeff?
I remember the one by the welding shop.
Yeah. So, that's when
Thank you.
I would have loved to have came in here and said, hey, the county's replacing the bridge or the culvert or whatever we want to call it. But when they said half,
I expressed a little frustration. This happened on March the 2nd, and they informed us of this last week, so that part was a little frustrating too. I think we could have been well underway with repairs. I
just don't think we should roll over that easy without having the attorney look at it or something?
Yeah, I'll look into
Just to
seeing
make
if there's a
sure.
separate definition of bridge. You said this spans about 8 feet?
I think it's,
I think the report that the county provided was, it varies, the span is not consistent, but it seemed to be around 7 feet, between 6 and 8 feet. $6'10" is what it's listed here.
I will research this and send an email update to everybody.
See, the next thing I have, so we're trying to get the building painted, and we ran into a little hiccup. The storm windows on the outside of these windows, all those out there, very complicated how they're installed. I really wanted the street guys to take care of it. However, we can't even find out how they're fastened. So I got a hold of J&L Glass. I also contacted Linnell. Linnell does not do that kind of thing. J&L provided us a quote to come in and remove those, let the painters do their work, and then reinstall them. It is real glass. It's not plexiglass. Very complicated cuts out here on these, the top of those.
This says they're broken. Are they broken already?
There's a couple broken ones, yeah, up here on the top of these out here.
Do they think they're gonna break when they pull them out or something?
No, they didn't indicate that they would break them, taking them out. However, they do have in here, replace all broken glass.
When Dave told me how much, you know, but wander around the building, look at them.
Yeah.
They are gonna need lifts, they are gonna need.
And for the public, the quote is $23,500.
Will there be repairs done if there's rotten wood behind it, or?
That's not included in this quote. However, we'll have to address that when we get there. I think I've seen in the bell tower, 1892 was the oldest signature up there. So it's an old building. I expect there's going to need to be some wood repair. We'll try our best to do it in-house.
Well, what I don't want to have happen is you do something like this and then put a window back over rotten wood when,
Right.
or something, you know.
Right.
Comments?
That'll be done.
Thing?
So you're gonna be watching this close as they do it to make sure,
Yes. I will.
because I
will keep track of everything that is broken and anything that they might break. But it does say there in the quote that they will replace all broken glass.
right.
I guess that.
As far as anything that's bad behind it, you guys will keep an eye on that.
Yeah, we'll keep it on that, make repairs where we need to.
Are they all glass now? Or are some of them plastic or something?
Oh, it looks like they're all glass. We've
Okay.
tapped on them, looked at them, they all look the same. it's unfortunate it's this much money. However, the paint, there's a lot of wood that's bare out there with no paint on it. We really need to get on top of it before it gets into rotting the wood.
Dustin?
Well, as my headache persists, I make a motion that we move forward with this and pay it out of CCP.
Motion been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Watch them like a hawk.
Dustin?
Like a hawk.
Greg? To fund it.
Now, the next expensive item I have on the agenda. So, community crossings, we're approaching a time to apply for that again for next year. The Monroe and Carlisle intersection, as we all know, was denied by the MPO. Our good friends at Banning Engineering has came up with a concept here that we could possibly apply for community crossings.
Okay. Mark again. So I wanted to give a little bit of history on the project. So it was identified that there's an issue here with vehicles coming into town southbound on Monroe Street with a high potential for crashing with active pedestrians walking in between the schools. We've got Newbie and the middle school and the high school all within a tenth of a mile or less. And so the town engaged in a consultant to do a traffic study here. They came up with some recommendations. We went to the MPO for funding with a proposal basically in essence the same as what you're seeing tonight. And I'll explain some differences that we put in. The MPO, although the project scored quite well, the MPO did not award funding because there were numerous projects that were ahead of ours in scoring that had a lot more traffic than this intersection sees. We're looking at about just under 10,000 cars a day. And the applications that we're in were much exceeding that. Plus, there are no recorded fatalities here, which then, unfortunately, the way the scoring works is it puts us down on the list.
You have to wait till they get killed.
Well,
That's, yeah.
anyway, it's the criteria that they use. So, rather than resubmit, it was presented that we look for a different way to fund the project. And I'd like to take just a minute to walk through the project on the sheet that I handed out. The main concern is slowing vehicles down coming into town from North Monroe Street. And the idea is to use a principle of traffic calming. It's where, similar to where you're entering a construction zone with tight lanes, the driving public generally slows down because they see it's a change in environment. It's a change in lane width. So we're proposing going from wide lanes down to 11-foot lanes by using striping in the middle and some curb and gutter on the shoulder side. And then we would plant some simple street trees along there, along the back of the curb on the right-hand side, and put in a small bit of storm pipe to make that happen. And then as they come into town, I just have to make a little correction. There shows in the diagram there's a stop bar. That is not the case. Just pretend the stop bar is not there. We don't have a stop warranted at this intersection because Carlisle doesn't have enough traffic. So Monroe would continue through, And pedestrians crossing the south leg of Monroe and Carlisle would activate a push button that has flashers that go across, and there's a small pedestrian refuge island with some bushes, or it could be stamped concrete, it could be, whatever the case might be for maintenance. They have that island there for refuge as cars go through. And then the whole area here would be milled and overlaid. So we're not proposing that the whole road be reconstructed all the way down. It'd just be a mill and overlay. And that mill and overlay would continue off the page south all the way down to Main Street, which would connect to the library area. Following that mill and overlay, we would either replace or put in new sidewalk where there's gaps in sidewalk, and put in the pedestrian activated flashing lights in front of Newbie and also in front of Paul Hadley near the Ball Diamond there. So a couple of pieces to the project that make this a little bit more in-depth, involved. Churchill Drive is a private drive. We would need to make some improvements. So we're hoping that we can get, perhaps instead of buying roadway right-of-way, that we can work a deal to maybe get that relinquished to the town in exchange for some transportation easement at the corners to make that intersection better there. And then we'd have to work with the business owner on the corner, southeast corner of Carlisle and Churchill, to get a sidewalk across there. So, so overall, the project comes in at about $1.34 million to do all of this. The proposal is to potentially break up the way this is paid for, where the redevelopment commission pays for the professional engineering, and then we leverage the community crossings grant for this coming call in July for the construction. So then the town would cover the 25% match, which would be roughly $395,000. And then if awarded, then the community crossing grant would cover the rest of the construction cost, which is about $1 million.
What did you say the town would pay?
$395,000.
And that's 25%?
That's 25% of the construction cost. Yeah. And just to be totally transparent, if we do have to go into a right-of-way acquisition for this, which we're hoping we don't have to do, then it would be in addition to that. So we're hoping we don't have to do that process.
Would Churchill be the only place we'd have to do the right-of-way?
Yeah, I have the little slash, like a little crosshatch. So there is a little place on the subway property that we'd have to talk about and see if we need that or not. Yeah, if we can make it work. So potentially we could get away with just getting a transportation easement of sorts, that we're not transferring land ownership. Yeah. We presented this at the redevelopment commission this past meeting, and they agreed to cover the professional services contingent upon the council if you chose to go ahead with the project or not. So,
What does this do to the rest of the community crossing grant? Would that be it, and there'd be no other roads applied for?
This would be it. Yeah, because the maximum amount for a calendar year is $1 million. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the sidewalks are a huge need in that area for all the school children that go through there.
We on a timeline on getting this in or anything?
Sure. So the timeline's important. To get the matching grant application in, it needs to be in by the end of July this year. which means that for us, time's of the essence to get going on it, get survey going, so we can have at least a 50% design, so that we can put together a reasonable and reliable cost estimate for the grant. Because if you remember, the way the grant works is if there's anything that's not covered in the cost estimate that is unexpected or comes up after the grant is in, then any of those costs will have to be paid for outside of the grant. There are two things that are already ineligible costs. One is the landscaping, so trees, shrubs, plants. Another thing is we proposed a simple welcome to Mooresville sign to help drivers understand that they're coming into town. This is not meant to be a big extravagant thing, just similar to like a residential entrance. But that also would be an ineligible cost.
And I know I asked you, were there any changes made to this from our original design when we approached that with the school and all
Yes.
that? We have
yes.
made, this is,
So a significant change is that the extent of the project is extended all the way down to Main Street. So you don't see it on the page, but it's going another block and a half or so, all the way down to Main Street. So, and the sidewalks.
all the way to the library?
All the way down to the library, yeah.
Are they new sidewalks all the way down?
They
Is that
would
what you're
be,
saying?
new sidewalks. all
Because the
way down.
ones there by the library are starting to
Yeah.
crumble pretty bad,
Yeah, and we would like to.
at least at the intersection. You know where I'm talking?
We would like to create some distance between the back of the curb and the sidewalk. Currently, they are married, one and the same. We'd like to create a pedestrian safety buffer.
Yeah, because our truck route's through there too. And I mean, there's no space between large vehicles and people.
Was this plan ran by the school? Did anybody talk to the school officials?
Jake Allen.
You did talk to Jay?
He serves as the school rep on the RDC now.
Yeah, okay, so he's aware of it.
He's well aware and was very ecstatic.
Were they gonna partner with us? Did they mention anything about that?
He mentioned that there's several projects that they're looking at, so he didn't say anything out loud, no.
Is it a problem if we push this off to the next meeting, first in July? Would that
What timing?
It would
cause a problem?
It would be tough to get the application in time. Yeah. We would try our best to get it in, but what would happen is we wouldn't have much of a design by that time, and so our cost estimate won't be as good. So which opens up potential, things that we don't catch. So.
And Dave, do you think, is this what you would recommend over?
Yeah, I think for the most part, our streets are in really good shape, and this is something that, the town council and leaders have looked at for a long time, wanting to do something in this intersection, so.
Needing to do something here.
Yeah, we need to do something here.
Well, there was a town employee hit at an intersection across from Newby, correct?
Right.
Just recently.
Dave, didn't we just, in one of the last community crossings grant, do Carlisle Street? Isn't that all new paving there? You've got mill and overlay on it. Mark, is that right? Is your Carlisle Street mill and overlay?
That was last year.
We did several years ago, didn't we?
That was last year.
It was last year.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have to mill and overlay this. It's
Okay.
all pretty new, just the sidewalks. You're right, that's a new street there, so.
Yeah, but can we do the sidewalks if we're not doing the road there in the application?
For us to be eligible for community crossings, we need to have at least a mill and overlay component. to make us eligible for the program. So,
What were they gonna say when they say you just did this a year ago? With the same money that we're giving you now, I mean.
right.
Sidewalks we could pay outside, I guess. But I'm just, I
Right.
don't,
Yeah,
I don't want the application to get looked at and say, wait a minute.
Right.
You know,
No, that's a
someone's
good
gonna look
point.
and say,
You're right, there's only 4 very short sections of sidewalk along there that we would be in the project, and we could do those in-house. I know we can do sidewalk in-house.
Yeah, we could modify this to take that piece out.
will that take our $390,000 out of it? No,
Some of it.
it'll reduce it.
It would reduce it, yes. Yeah.
Striping too, we'd have to.
Yeah, striping, and if you wanted to do there's a bit of signage and some, the pedestrian push buttons up here, but that's maybe something that school could
Maybe the school,
help contribute. Yeah.
Is there any lighting other than the pedestrian lights that they push button?
Currently, no, there's no lighting in the scope of the project.
Would that help meet a criteria? Like if you lit up this intersection here? I'm thinking in the morning, you know, when students go to school, they may be walking in the dark, especially in the wintertime.
Wintertime, yeah.
You know, so like where you've got some of these crosswalks, it might make sense if it's not too costly to.
Yeah. To answer your question, for this program, it wouldn't help meet any criteria.
Okay.
In fact, it would be an ineligible cost.
Oh, okay.
But I agree that lighting will do nothing but help the safety of the intersection, especially those early mornings in the winter. Absolutely.
The schools complained about, you know, even on Carlisle, their entrances and so forth, they complain about it being dark around the school system.
And I could see vehicles coming into town, seeing that area lit up would change the view and slow them down. Yeah. So.
Dustin, did the redevelopment board say that they would pay for the soft costs or the,
Professional services is all we can pay for since it's so far out of the TIF. You don't have to use, but he is standing in front of us right now. Yes, we already voted that if the town moved forward, we would pick up those costs.
so them getting started now costs you and not us?
Yes.
Yeah. You seem to be a little apprehensive about moving forward this quickly.
Well, no, I would have disliked time to sit down and run this new design by the school. Because we had a committee, we sat down and we all sat down and worked fairly well together, so. But I mean, I'm for the project, obviously it needs to happen. Just coming into this meeting tonight, not being aware of it, you know, I'd like a little more time so I could talk to them and seeing what their thoughts were and stuff, so. With the changes.
Can you make minor changes for a little bit yet?
Yes, actually. So the real driver is to get survey started, the survey work, which is an independent track than design. So there's still time yet, probably into the 1st of July to start, you know, to tweak any of this island, no island, extents, you know. And then we've gotten pretty good at putting in that application quickly and completely. So yeah, there's certainly time.
So with approval tonight, you can still make some changes. This is not all set, okay.
Yeah, this is meant to just explain the concept and breadth of what we want to accomplish. Yeah.
Motion to move forward with planning, engineering, and community crossings funds. Yeah, Shane?
Move forward.
Greg?
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Greg, Shane, 5-0.
This is
All I have for the second.
That's enough.
Appreciate it.
Next department head.
Sounds good.
Not everyone at once.
You want to set this on the corner if people want to see it?
You good? Matt? Chris? Department heads?
Dave did enough.
Dave took up all your time. Legal counsel.
Uh,
Did you have anything
on the,
Just real quickly, we put the large thing there for people to look at if they want to see that intersection on their way out. Just for your informational purposes, it's on the corner there.
Outside of that, no, I don't have anything to add right now.
Public comments. Sign up to speak. Rob? Tammy?
Well, space to read.
Don't know if I can get an answer, but I have no idea what happened on the K-9 funding, because I thought what was advertised was public comment part, so I don't know if anything happened or if it's being pushed and something else will happen tonight. I even checked with some people that were watching this, and no one seems to know what just happened. So I'm just going to read what I wrote in case there was public comments on that, which some of you, I wasn't planning on being here, so I'd sent this just in case. But K-9 program, I mean, what I thought would be a vote, kind of a tough one for me, and I kept going back and forth because I've been a proponent for K-9 funding, but this time I really am having trouble seeing the purpose of pushing this one-time funding through. We don't have a police chief. The only experienced K-9 handler has left the department in an unceremonious fashion after 14 years due to the orders of a town council member and/or police commission member. The only officer throughout this entire process who's expressed interest in being a K-9 handler, one who went out to train on his own time, is leaving the department due to attacks against him by a member of the council during council meetings. So with all of this, I really don't see a reason for the town council to appropriate $25,000 for a K-9 when it's highly unlikely that it's going to happen this year. So that money would be sitting there just as the donated K-9 fund money is. And then on the conversations where Diana was explaining the two different scenarios, I don't know if that money is appropriated, if it's sitting in a fund to be used, if it's not, what's actually happening there. So hopefully someone can explain that in council comments. I truly see this vote not as one that does anything positive for the town with the current situation that the police department is in with K-9, but instead is being pushed through by one council member in order to say he accomplished something when there's still not going to be a K-9 program, and the department does not even have a chief to implement a K-9 program. I propose holding on to this until there is a permanent chief hired and discussing with that person what their thoughts are, what their goals, and what their plans for a K-9 program is, even if they want to have one or have plans for it. So from where we were back in July and August, we're in a totally different place now. And then at that point, get a realistic timeline that money can then be appropriated towards a K-9 fund. So I don't see any reason that this has to be pushed through tonight, right now, this month, this year, because it's probably not going to happen. Otherwise, you're just taking money that can be used somewhere else in the immediate future. The next thing I wanted to bring up kind of goes back from last town council meeting and ties into a statement that was made and something that occurred. So I've got a memorandum of understanding dated June 13th, which states, given the fact that the town council dismissed Kevin Julian as Mooresville Police Department Chief of Police at its regular meeting on March 15th, 2022, Indiana law now requires that Kevin Julian be demoted back to his last permanent rank obtained before he was appointed the Mooresville Chief of Police. Kevin Julian's last permanent rank with the MPD was lieutenant. Therefore, by operation of Indiana law, Kevin Julian is now legally in possession of the rank of lieutenant, and he is also now legally entitled to the full salary and related wage benefits of this rank, regardless of what his actual duties may entail as he performs as a law enforcement officer for the MPD. So then on June 13th, Christopher Hobbick, Brock Chipman decided that Kevin Julian's present duty assignment will be performing in the role of a police officer and not as a lieutenant supervisor. Therefore, in order to avoid any confusion by the employees of the MPD or by the public at large, when having contact with Kevin Julian, he'll need to remove his lieutenant's insignia off his police uniform. This will make it clear to everyone, including Kevin Julian himself, that he's not presently an MPD lieutenant supervisor required to perform any and all supervisory duties. His entire job duties, rather, are that of being a patrol officer instead. So I'm public, I would have no idea if you're an officer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, or whatever. So last council meeting, and Diana, you weren't here, I called you Diane instead of Diana. Forgive me, because I was reading off of a lot of stuff, and I'm at 5 minutes and 35 seconds, so I'll hurry so we don't get another unscientific poll going up. But I see this as retaliation because Jeff Cook kept wanting to refer to Lieutenant Julian, which according to this document, he's Lieutenant Julian, as Officer Julian, until Rose Julian corrected him saying, hey, he is still a lieutenant. I corrected myself during public comments because, again, I was reading off, so I didn't just want to insult Diana by saying her name wrong. Brian Case, I inadvertently called him lieutenant. That caused a council member to clutch his pearls and almost come back at me. So I corrected that. I referred to Captain Case as lieutenant inadvertently. So just as a council member was corrected that Officer Julian is still Lieutenant Julian per this document and per the law, now it seems like there was retaliation done 3 months later. I'm not aware of issues with the police department, but as one council member said, I don't know anything as what's going on. So just wanted to bring that up, that seems like it's clear retaliation simply because of what Rose Julian said. Now, on the same line as clutching pearls, I know what was said in that meeting with police officers. And it was said by the interim chief of police stating that he would rather Tom Brady his phone, leading to destroying evidence. So you can sit up here and say nobody knows what happened. The people that were there know what happened. Then the last thing, I'm at 7:33 and I apologize for going over 5 minutes. My last request is Taft Law is a contractor to the town. As a contractor, Beth Copeland should be reminded that the taxpayers are the ones who are paying the legal fees for the town, and she should treat taxpayers with a level of respect. Getting responses such as the town considers this matter closed as the only response to a taxpayer who lives in Mooresville is both curt and rude. Believe me, I hate going through the process of public records requests. Nor do I enjoy going through the public access counselor complaint process either. But when the town, via Beth Copeland, responds to citizens like that, that leaves no choice but to continue that process. So I'm a taxpayer. I want the town protected. Please don't have a contractor talking curt and rude to a taxpayer like that. So again, thanks everyone and have a great rest of the evening. 8 minutes and 43 seconds.
Thank you.
Jeff leave? Jeff? I think he left. Rose Julian?
It seems like a stack, but it's not as thick as it actually looks like. I think everybody at this point knows I'm Rose Julian. Husband was former Chief Kevin Julian in Morrisville PD. March 15th, he was demoted, and Kev and I were at peace actually with this. Although we were hurt, we were at peace. However, it was after Town Council received the backlash that Councilman Shane Williams went on a smear campaign to discredit Kev. And at that point, I felt that it was just intolerable and I had to speak up. Kev's always been quick to forgive and move on, letting things roll off his back. Me, not so much, especially when it involves my family. As his wife, I've been privy to information, hearing conversations, both conversations on the phone, that were not necessarily made for the public. So I presented this to the town at different times. And I was told by others that they has experienced similar situations, many of them feeling that if they spoke up, they would have repercussions. So they left their positions within the town, and even some moving out of the town. I'm sorry, this is still hard. I wanted to believe that speaking up was in the interest of the town to hear both sides of the argument, both sides of the position. Problem is, speaking up did have repercussions. It's had repercussions for Dave and how he was dismissed after 14 years of service, saying he was a liability, but a 2-year vet wasn't, and was allowed to continue his position until he was able to officially leave. Repercussions in how Kev is now not to even wear his rank. To me, this is repercussion. This shows corruption by the town council, police commission, as well as the interim chief, because it basically strips him of his merit rank. I spoke with Chris Hobbick tonight regarding it, and he said that he wasn't aware, he didn't know. However, it was brought up the meeting following his demotion at the police commissioner's meeting. There was no argument, and it was clear that he was allowed to go ahead and permitted to wear his rank. But however, 3 months later, again, he's stripped of that rank. After David Schultz was treated the way he was upon giving his notice, Casey, Dave's wife, messaged interim Chief Brockman. He stated the following: I had nothing to do with this other than being forced into the position to do it. I am in an awful position and hated by a lot of people. I have to do what I can to protect my job at this point. I'm not going to argue an order. I told them my issues with it and did what I was told. Later in the same conversation, he messages, it's over, we all got to move on. I get your frustrations, but we have to put things behind us and move forward. First, there is no force. He could have said this is wrong and stepped up and said, I'm not doing this, and stepped down as interim chief and stood on the integrity and the moral compass Second, there is concern for his job because of the comments about destroying evidence versus turning it over. Furthermore, there's also no moving forward until there is recognition in wrong and how someone or the town can do better. Getting the basics down before you move on is to the harder stuff is essential. And again, as Rob said, it's kind of a moot point. With Kev's K-9 policy as it was written, it requires 3-year minimum. There is no current officer willing to step up and take a K-9. So once you get an officer, it's at least 3 years before it's even going to be a point of issue where we can even get a K-9 again. When Councilman Shane Williams campaigned, he said he wanted transparency. I was a strong supporter of this as I believe in transparency. Shane said that he welcomed and wanted to hear from the community, that he would never delete comments or postings, yet he's deleted postings and blocked members of the community. This isn't transparency.
That's false.
It
On my
is not
councilman
false.
page, no one's been blocked ever on my official page, so thank you.
I'm not talking about the official page. I'm talking
That's the
about
one that matters, the official page. My personal page is mine. Thank you.
on other social media platforms. He's deleted postings and blocked members of the community. This isn't transparency. It's only presenting half-truths. For example, in a recent media posting, Councilman Shane Williams, that is my fault. Shane Williams states, Interim Chief Brock Chipman, I can't even get my words out, in his short stint as interim has inventoried all weapons and ammunition at the PD, has also made sure all officers have performed proficiencies passing their firearms for 2022. Last meeting, it was presented that the PD just completed qualifications and ammo was low and that he couldn't locate the order confirmation, that an order was expected, that an order would not be expected to arrive until December of 2022. Yes, ammo was ordered back in December. There was a delay, but once Kev presented the order and its confirmation to intern Brock Chipman and the company located the order was shipped, received just days after Brock went out and purchased ammo at a higher price than that of the ammo that Kev had already ordered for the PD. Now that part of the budget is gone. Yet Shane wants to give him kudos.
Yeah, I do.
With saying he was able to secure ammunition. Remember, Kev was demoted in March, 3 months after ordering the ammo. He would have followed up on its status prior to training and researched other options in advance to the latest qualifications. So why didn't Interim Chief Brock Chipman look at the ammo levels prior to the qualifications, checking the status of the order with the confirmation or researching other options prior to getting that low of a level? This doesn't show that he is, quote, prioritizing it, as Councilman Shane Williams would have you believe. Kev has been cooperative and being willing to help and give support to Interim Chief Brock Chipman, even planning on staying late from his shift to assist Brock in other projects, grants, etc. that could help the PD. However, it has been Brock who doesn't show up at the 7 a.m. time as they planned, not even bother to notifying him in advance to reschedule. As for the weapons, Kev also did an inventory and reported missing weapons to council and did a thorough search investigation looking for it. And when it wasn't located, notified town council again and had a police report made. Councilman Williams presented in his social media post stating Interim Chief Brock Chipman recently requested a host of used firearms to be surplus, this completing another overdue task after new guns arrived months ago. taxpayers will receive value for these weapons. True, only a portion of these weapons had been surplused. Based on the town council attorney legal firm who advised Kev to sell the weapons in increments to avoid and keep below the 5,000 mark and at least push it out 6 months between the sale of those weapons. Or that it would need to be going to auction. Ultimately, this allowed a better return on the selling price of the weapons. Kudos given to intern Brock Chipman. What about the town council, police commission taking action to have an outside agency investigate the comments made about destroying evidence that would take, and that of the National Guard being needed to take their phone? Where is this accountability? What about town council answering in a transparent, open forum, public meeting such as this, the questions asked to each of you last meeting but never answered, other than Councilman Shane Williams inadvertently stating that he wouldn't comment on what is said in a supervisor's meeting, while I nor Rob mentioned where the statements were made. Once again, proving that town council knew of the statements and are doing nothing about it. The concerns brought to the town council are not being addressed. It's upsetting because I see the community that I and my family have lived and loved being destroyed little by this town council. A police department where my husband has dedicated 25 years of service being destroyed with this distrust of each other and a lack of faith in the leadership of the current interim chief and his moral code. It breaks my heart that the morale that was built and the camaraderie that was there and being built is gone. That some of our young, great officers have left or plan to leave. That experienced long-term officers that have dedicated their life to serving Morrisville have left or plan to leave. On a side note, I've been asked multiple times by many concerned citizens, would Kev consider being chief again? No. As his wife, I wouldn't even encourage it, especially under a corrupt town council and police commission. My speaking out and giving my opinions on who is going to be the next police chief is mine alone, to share and speak on. Regardless if I'm correct on my prediction of who is going to be chief, I know that they would be buds with Councilman Cook, and that even though he says he doesn't want to be chief, he is the chief behind the scenes, as evident by the repercussions already talked about. And if the next chief opposes him, they will be out just as quickly. On an additional note, I have no regrets about speaking out, but I do regret that I let my anger over the smear campaign and the systematic attacks on Kev that had and still continue to, that he has to continue to endure, how it's affected me. I allowed the devil in, and presenting the truth behind the motives of the town council, I spoke with sarcasm and hurt. For that, I was wrong. Thankfully, the Lord has softened my heart to this, and I am once again praying for each of you and the direction of this town and its leadership. I'm sorry for speaking to you, the town council, and the town the way I did, and I ask that you forgive me. I ask that you pray for the town council, the police commission, and the police department in this town, that we elect godly town council leaders, and that as a town we get a strong, godly police chief that will lead with a strong sense of integrity and moral code. With that, I'm done.
Lindsay Hayden. Sorry?
I'm good.
You're good? Is there anyone else that didn't sign in? Motion for approval of payment of claims.
Make a motion that we approve claims in the amount of $2,771,850.44. You want to give a brief explanation why insurance and all that?
Yeah, if you want me to. In the docket, there is transfer of funds, and what that does is that takes, each department will have funding for health insurance. And that takes that funding out of their budget line item of health insurance and moves it into one line item of health insurance. So it is going to be spent. I'm not saying that we're not spending it, but what it's doing is it's moving it within the departments. And there was $1,953,199 that was moved within the budgets at that point. So we thought that Dustin was spending a lot of money, but apparently he wasn't. There was also a policy, there's also a policy that was due. It's an annual policy for our insurance on all of our stuff, and it was $268,000. So right there, $2.2 million of monies that account for that $277,000. Have a motion to approve the claims. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dustin Gregg, 5-0. Town council comments.
I've none.
Shane?
I'll answer the one question about the canine program. What happened with the ordinance that was supposed to be voted on tonight, the notice to the paper. So there's a notice that goes out to advertise the hearing, right? Or the process. It did not match the ordinance. They added another step to the ordinance. So, it started the process over so that we could advertise it properly. So that the ordinance that I voted to move forward with does all of the things that I've always said it would do. It's $25,000. It establishes a separate line item in the budget. Whether the money is in a line item in a canine fund or whether it's in another fund or the money is the money, it's still cash on hand. So it's not wasting anything. If the new chief doesn't want to spend it, he doesn't have to, or she, whoever it is. It's just setting it up to where he doesn't have to go through, or she doesn't have to go through this process of another year and a half of debate and messing around. That's all it does. And whether, I would assume experience would count for a lateral. I mean, if a lateral handler came, you don't know who's going to come and who's not, so I don't see why that's a problem either. On the forgiveness issue, I think I have no problem with forgiveness, but I think it's odd to call us corrupt and then ask for forgiveness in the same set of comments. I just think that's kind of odd. And I think Brock Chipman deserves an apology from several people. Hey, Brock, could you lift up your phone? Did you destroy that phone or any evidence? I mean, it's not even evidence, really.
Yes, my cell phone was my property, but I turned in right when I was told to, like 4 days after that meeting.
Yeah, and I verified with Beth Copeland directly that you've been 100% cooperative. You've not advised anybody to destroy anything, correct? And you obviously didn't Tom Brady your phone because it's sitting there with you. So I think those false accusations should stop. And all the comments about you being a Judas and all the other things that these folks have stated, I think you are owed a big apology for stepping up, just for simply stepping up for the town. That's all I have.
Greg? Dustin?
Unfortunately, a couple things. One, I need to advise the council that the RDC voted to provide up to $150,000 for a fencing dredging project for the police station. It was brought to our attention that they would want a secure area for the radio tower to impound cars. They also have concerns about people walking through the lot, so they worked with one of the commissioners to see this project through. We are in the current amendment of the agreement, but I want to make sure that the council can start doing the research into how the fence is going to look and all this, because it will ultimately come before us for full project approval. So just throwing that out there. Second, Rose, I pray for your husband. I pray for the police. My children do every night, although tonight I usually watch my phone to watch them go to bed. Thank you. Pray that the police officers leaving be safe every night. Pray that the firefighters that both retired and work are safe as well. All of our town employees and citizens. So thank you for injecting a little faith tonight. That's all I got.
Our next town council meeting will be Tuesday, July 5th. We're going to have that after the 4th this time, okay?
I appreciate that.
Motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Dustin Shane, 5-0.
Jeff? Jeff?
I got the CF1.